Studies in the Scriptures. The path of the just is as the shining light, which shineth more and more unto the perfect day. Series 1. The Divine Plan of the Ages. A vindication of the divine character and government, showing by a recognition and harmonizing of all Scriptures that the permission of evil, past and present, is educational and preparatory to the ushering of mankind into the golden age of prophecy, in which all the families of the earth will be blessed, and a full knowledge of God, and a full opportunity for attaining everlasting life through the Redeemer, who then will be the great restorer and life-giver. Acts 3:19 through 21. The King of Kings and Lord of Lords, in the interest of his consecrated saints, waiting for the adoption, and of all that in every place call upon the Lord, the household of faith, and of the groaning creation, travailing and waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. This work is dedicated to make all see what is the fellowship of the mystery which from the beginning of the world hath been hid in God, wherein he hath abounded toward us in all wisdom and prudence, having made known unto us the mystery of his will, according to his good pleasure, which he hath proposed in himself, and that the dispensation of the fullness of the times he might gather together in one all things under Christ. Ephesians 3:4, 5, 9, 1, 8 through 10. Written in 1886 by Pastor Russell. Publisher's Foreword. An occasional book will transcend its time and continue to speak with meaning to many generations, and thus will become a timeless classic. The Divine Plan of the Ages has become a modern religious classic. Quietly in its circulation has spiraled well past 8 million and continues to rise steadily year after year. Circulation alone, however, does not convey the scope of its influence. This work contains new ideas and concepts. It presents a chain of scriptural evidence which reveals a comprehensive view of God's majestic plan. This book enables the reader easily to distinguish the age divisions in the Bible and God's movement in each of them, because by so many have been helped in understanding the Bible, it is known among its enthusiastic readers today as the key to the Scriptures. The Divine Plan of the Ages is not a new book. It was written in 1886. Its tone and content stood in marked contrast to the preaching of that day. The churches prepared for an enlarged witness and conquest of the world were surprised by a massive attack from higher critics of the Bible and religion, but lacked intelligent answers to these attacks. A large-scale loss of faith in the inspiration of the Bible resulted. The Divine Plan of the Ages helped earnest Christians stem the tide of infidelity and brought a basis of faith even to unbelievers. The author defined with remarkable clarity the worldwide aspects of the time of trouble. While others spoke of peace, he boldly forecast spasms of war, revolution, and anarchy culminating in the collapse of world governments. Just as the trouble was accurately depicted, so also the events of today and the future were traced beyond the darkest moments of trouble into the glories of God's kingdom come. We recommend it unreservedly as a priceless treasure, the most reliable and significant religious work of the 19th and 20th centuries. Every perceptive reader of the Bible should find its rewarding study. Publishers' footnotes have superior reference numbers. All other footnotes are the author's. The Publisher, 1975. The Divine Plan of the Ages. The author's foreword. The author and the publisher's desire to publicly acknowledge the favor of God which has permitted them to be identified with the circulation of this volume, and with the result, light, joy, peace, fellowship with God to many hungry, thirsty, bewildered souls. The first edition in its present form was issued in 1886. Since then, one edition has followed another in rapid succession and in 20 different languages. Until now, there are nearly 5 million copies of it in the hands of the people all over the world. We cannot hope that these books have all been read, but letters continually coming to hand assure us that they are working powerfully in the hearts and minds of people everywhere. Thousands write us that they have been influenced, some who have totally disbelieved in the Bible as a divine revelation to mankind. Others write that they have been atheists or approximately so, because they had not previously known the true God and his true plan of the ages, and were unable to accept, appreciate, or worship the characters usually held before them in the creeds. For above 5 years preceding the first publication of this volume, we had substantially the same matter in print under another name and differently presented. That book was entitled Food for Thinking Christians. Its style was different in that it first of all attacked the error, demolished it, and then, in its place, erected the fabric of truth. We finally learned that this was not the best way, that some became alarmed as they saw their errors falling, and failed to read far enough to get a glimpse of the beautiful structure of the truth in place of the demolished errors. The present volume was written from the reserved standpoint. It presents the truth, shows its strength and beauty, then suggests the removal of the error, as not only unnecessary, but absolutely useless and very injurious. Thus, the reader of the Divine Plan of the Ages at each step finds a strengthening of faith and a great nearness to the Lord, and therefore a confidence that he is in the right way. After seeing the truth, the errors are more and more seen to be absurd, worthless, injurious, and are gladly abandoned. The great adversary, of course, has no love for anything which opens the eyes of God's people, increases their reverence for God's book, and breaks their reliance upon human creeds. The great adversary, therefore, as we might have expected, is very much opposed to this book. Few realize Satan's power and cunning. Few realize the meaning of the apostles' words in respect to the prince of darkness, who transforms himself into a minister of light in order to fight the truth and destroy its influence. Few realize that our wily adversary seeks to use the best, most energetic, the most influential of God's people to hinder the shining of the light and to keep the divine plan of the ages away from the people. Few realize that from the time creed making began, AD 325, there was practically no Bible study for 1,260 years. Few realize that during that time the creeds were riveted upon the minds of millions, shackling them to horrible errors and blinding them to the divine character of wisdom, justice, love, power. Few realize that since the Reformation, since the Bible began to come back into the hands of the people, well-meaning but deluded reformers have been blinded and handicapped by the errors of the past, and in turn have served to keep the people in darkness. Few realize that the real Bible study, such was practiced in the early church in the days of the apostles, has only now come back to Bible students. In the earliest editions of this volume, the title Millennial Dawn was used. We found that some were deceived thereby into thinking it's a novel, in order that none might be deceived and that none might purchase under such deception. We later adopted the present serial title, Studies in the Scriptures, which nobody can misunderstand. Many queries have come to us to why these books cannot be found in the bookstores. Our answer is that while the book publishers would be glad to have these books, there are certain religious zealots who would not permit their sale, threatening boycott. At first, this seemed like a great disaster, as though the power of the adversary would be permitted to hinder the dissemination of the truth. But God graciously overruled the matter, so that today probably no other book has so large a circulation and so steady a circulation as this volume. Those who through prejudice refused to read the book and fought against it did so because they believed falsehoods, misrepresentations. Many of these books have been burned by people who never read them, but who were influenced by misrepresentations, just as it was during the Dark Ages, in respect to the followers of Jesus, who suffered martyrdom. Yes, Jesus himself suffered at the hands of those who did not understand him or his teachings, as St. Peter pointedly declares, "And now, brethren, I wot that through ignorance ye did it, as did also your rulers." Acts 3:17. For had they known it, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. 1 Corinthians 2:8. But if the enemies of this book have been bitter, unjust, untruthful, its friends are proportionately warm and zealous. The millions of copies in the hands of the people have nearly all passed out through the friends of the book, who, from the love of the truth, have given time and energy for its wide circulation. While we write these lines, we have knowledge of the fact that approximately 600 Christian people from various walks of life have left all earthly business and calling and ambitions, that they may glorify the Lord and bless his hungry saints by putting this little volume into their hands. These include doctors, school teachers, nurses, ministers, barbers, mechanics, people from every walk of life who, touched the heart themselves with the love of God, are anxious to pass the blessing on to other hearts and heads. The books are sold at a small price, and these culpritors who take them around to the public are barely able to make their expenses. They rejoice, however, all the more if sometimes they have privations and are counted worthy to suffer some inconveniences and deprivations for the sake of the Lord and the truth and the brethren. The good work goes on. The message of life in Christ passes from hand to hand. The present output of this volume is enormous. May its blessing in the future days be proportionately as great as the past. The author and publishers cannot ask for more. With the very best wishes to all readers, your servant in the Lord, Charles T. Russell. Brooklyn, New York, October 1st, 1916.